Hi everybody. Today I would like to talk about the negativity in the tea community. So you know that there's a variety of social media platforms which discuss tea. You will find Facebook, Reddit, and recently, like 2 weeks ago, I discovered a new one, which is Discord. Discord, which is a collection of chat forums, and I was invited by a fellow tea drinker to join this community, and it's really interesting because, I think so far it's the most interesting community that I've found relating to pu'er tea. You find really good, pretty high-level discussions on a variety of subjects, and it was fascinating to explore this community. And just yesterday, actually, I found some drama coming up because apparently a couple of vendors from several fairly well-known websites joined the community at the same time. I was among them, actually, and I think it's just a sheer coincidence that these vendors joined at the same time, and it sparked a debate in that Discord community among the tea drinkers of whether the tea vendors should be allowed to be part of the community or not. I'm not going to go into detail on this argument, but I want to treat a part of what was debated. I would say that half of the debate regarded like if the vendors are present in the community, then the tea, then people won't be free to discuss tea and won't be free to criticize tea, actually, because they might hurt, for example, they might hurt the vendor's feeling, and they would be maybe in fear of some retribution of some sort, although this is kind of vague, I would say. And so it led me to think, I thought for the whole afternoon actually about the negativity in the community. And yes, when I discovered this Discord channel, I was actually pleased that some people were quite critical about some of the teas they tasted. Well, everybody is critical, of course, but here some of them would put some negative criticisms of the tea. So, for example, they tried the tea and they were not satisfied with it. And yet I found that probably 90–95% of those tea reviews are positive. So it means that most of the time the reviewer liked the tea. And I thought, how come this ratio is so high? Of course, when I'm drinking my pu'er tea, sure, most of the time I enjoy the session. But if I were to rate the session, for example, on a scale of 0 to 10, well, you would expect that in a good scale, you should have the average at 5 and probably a normal distribution going from this session. But looking at the tea reviews everywhere, it looked as if the average would be more around 8 or 9. And we find this also on Amazon, on Taobao, or on all those platforms in which people assign a rank or assign stars or a mark to anything, any product. It seems that anything that's below 8 out of 10 is a bad product. So it's quite interesting to think in that way, because it means that the scale or standard is very skewed. Because then it would mean that giving 5 out of 10 means a really, really awful product. And while it should be actually a mediocre product. And I found out that mediocre, actually the value of that word changed over time, because it seems that in the past mediocre would simply mean average, like it was the median So if you're a mediocre person, you're just an average person. And over time, it seems that since everybody wants to be above average, it seems that being mediocre acquired the meaning of being totally substandard. So it's quite interesting to think about this. So we can see that positivity permeates through all aspects of society. And of course, it would depend on the culture, I would say. But it seems that we're less and less allowed in our culture, in our society, to give negative criticisms to things. And therefore, I think the consequence to this is a depreciation of the words, of the good criticisms. It means that if you never say that anything is bad, then you can throw in as many superlatives as you want about something. Your words have no weight because you've never criticized something before. While on the opposite, if someone is very, very critical in a negative way all the time, if he just says, oh, this tea was decent, it probably means that the tea was very good to him. So I guess if you always write reviews which are overly positive, well, it will be hard in the end to understand which teas stand out for you. So I guess that there are two cases. Either you're just a very positive person and everything you do is absolutely amazing, so you find no reasons for criticizing anything. And in this case, I guess, your words, your positive words will have a lower weight than if it was a more negative person in general. So that would be one possibility to explain why the tea community overall is positive. Or another possibility would be that you often have a not so great tea session, but you don't post about it, so you will just avoid talking about negative experiences. And I think that's what's most likely the case, because I guess our standard adapts. It's just tea is just like wine. And for example, if you're used to drinking some tea bags, then you could say you have a low standard, and I could understand why your mind could be blown by drinking a good oolong tea or maybe even a poor tea. But if you're a seasoned poor tea drinker, for example, well, I guess at some point you've had plenty of amazing experiences, and now you're at some kind of average. So logically, the tea should average at a 5 out of 10 and not an 8 or 9 out of 10. And that way, that would leave more room actually for the truly outstanding teas. Because if you've already run out of superlatives for like a basic tea or just a good tea, but that you can find, like how will you describe your most sublime experience with tea that you'll get at some point, like your best tea of the year? How will you describe it? And so that's why I think it's important to have that moderation in our words, so that our words retain their weight. So I think all the positive words you say should be balanced with some negative words in some way. So if I say that all these teas are exceptional, then if I say this tea is good, it should mean that it's a bad tea, actually, because I'm used to saying that everything is awesome and exceptional. And I don't really see what it adds, being extremely positive. The main disadvantage I see is just that the scale is skewed and we're just at that 8 out of 10. And in the end, there would be no difference between like a 1 out of 10 and a 3 out of 10. So it means we would lose in terms of accuracy, because then you're like, and then you'd end up with the wine, like, you know, you have those classifications, and like if you have 90 out of 100, it's decent, but the truly good wines will be between like 95 and 98. And I guess, so in the end, like the baseline for good wines would be 90 to 100. So in the end, you can drop all the 90 points before that, because it would mean it's mediocre wine. And basically no wine can be rated below 60. So it means that shows how we've progressed in the positivity. And I think if we want, so to come back to the idea of materialistic analytical session versus spiritual session, well, of course, I would say in a materialistic session, if you want to be analytical, you should make sure that your scale is not skewed and remains at 5 out of 10. And maybe you could think about what should a mediocre tea taste like. And you could think that half of the time the tea you have tastes worse than this mediocre tea, and half of the time it tastes better. And when you think about it, then that mediocre term is probably not the idea, not the sense of the word that you had in mind. Usually when we say mediocre, it sounds like a very bad adjective. I'm having that pasha tea now, and I can tell you from the first cup that it's already above average. Now, so I think being overly positive is bad for the appreciation in general of the tea. If you want to be analytical and more elitist, I think it's really fine to criticize this tea, and if you didn't like that tea or had an average session, you should dig into that negativity, try to extract more knowledge. Why didn't you like this tea? And you'll find out that very often a bad tea is more entertaining than a boring tea, actually. I think the worst tea session I can have nowadays is just an average soup pu'er or an average Yunnan black tea, because it's just a waste of time, you know. I remember a couple of years ago I was in Laos and I tried some bitter tea, and it was so bitter that it was absolutely awful, and I thought, this is not tea, it's poison. And I totally remember this tea session to this day. It was a very bad tea, and it was a good experience for me in my tea drinker's life. Now, I could understand that some people might be worried about hurting some vendors' feeling about the saying that their tea is bad. And when I started selling tea, like back in 2012, and at that time I would sell a very small quantity of tea, of course, because I had just started in the tea business, and I would almost stalk the tea forums in search of reviews of our tea and what people thought about the tea, and if something bad appeared, I could be devastated. And so the fact that reading a bad review of my tea would hurt my feelings, well, it's a problem for me. And actually, if you criticize vendors and that they are hurt by these critics, well, you're doing a good thing for the vendor, I guess. Because if you're hurt by someone saying your tea is bad, then, well, I guess you need to acquire more wisdom. So maybe by giving negative reviews to vendors, you're actually teaching them wisdom if it affects them at all. And once you go beyond that idea of feeling, so once you're a seasoned vendor, I guess you should have a lot of tea reviews, and I hope that you'll have at least read some negative reviews about your tea. Because of course, however good your tea is, it would be highly suspicious to have like 100% agreement on the taste of this tea. So I hope that you can encounter some negative tea reviews as a drinker, as a tea seller. Once you make peace with this idea of receiving critics about your work, then these negative reviews become a great source of improvement. It's a great opportunity to improve. Now, of course, when you receive the critics, you have to assess, I would say, the relevance of the critics, whether the tea drinker is really qualified enough, you could say, to have an accurate judgment on the tea, whether the judgment is more of a subjective, I mean, relates to some subjective preferences. So, for example, when it comes to bitterness, you could say it's kind of a subjective preference. So maybe the person just didn't like the tea because it didn't fit her taste, or whether it's more a matter of objective quality. And then, if it's a matter of objective quality and the person you deem the person qualified enough to make an informed judgment, then that's a great piece of information for you. Because you know that, of course, the best transaction is when you send the goods to the customer and the customer is happy. But then there are some cases when you send the goods and the customer is unhappy and he tells you about it. But the worst case scenario is when the customer is unhappy and he doesn't tell you about it. He just won't buy your tea again. And for me as a tea vendor, then that's the worst case scenario. I would much prefer receive criticisms, and that way we have that information. An example I have in mind for regarding our tea business is like the labels, the stickers with the names of the teas on the packages. Well, they were actually terrible because the glue didn't adhere very well to the paper, and they would fall out very quickly either during transportation or at the customer's home. And this actually, it took us a long time to realize that. And had we had maybe this kind of very criticizing customer, maybe we would have found it earlier. And actually I think the customer who told me about this, because yeah, I think I learned it through one of your emails. So I'm very thankful, because that's how I got aware of the issue. And now we handwrite the name of the teas on the stickers. So yeah, I think criticizing, being negative, it's actually a good deed if it's done with good intentions. We tend to have, I think, that skewed idea of saying that positive is good and negative is evil. But if you look in life, who are the most evil people that you know? Generally, they tend to be agreeable people. And the people who are quite disagreeable and like to criticize, they are generally of a good nature inside. So when you have tea communities like Reddit, Discords and things like that, I think you should start a discussion within your community about how you should assess the teas, what kind of standard do you set for what's a good tea or not. And I guess, of course, it will depend on the community, how elitist the community is or how casual it is, but I think it would be good to have that discussion. Thank you for watching, and see you later. Bye-bye.